Well, good morning. It's my privilege again to be here with you today. And I'm here today to introduce Ventilation Hygiene Elite. This scheme has come about for many reasons, which I'll go into, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague Duncan, who's here, who's head of certification for BESA, and he actually heads up this scheme. So we're going to look at the introducing BESA to you, what's driven this scheme, what lays behind it, and where we're trying to get to it, and how it's going to work. And that's backed up by qualifications and a whole raft of requirements that have formed a whole scheme. So it's a 360-degree view of this industry and the work that this industry does on behalf of your own industries. So introducing BESA, and as we rightly say, so we start way back here in 1904, which 14 initial members got together and said, you know what we should do? We should standardize the way that we do things. And that's where we started. And then we're actually, even though we're very well known for being the HVCA, that actually only came about in 1963. BESA itself was formed in 2006, and we renamed ourselves in 2016 as BESA. So BESA itself is the independent, impartial arm of our own trade association. To join BESA, you have to be independently checked that the work that you do is satisfactory and you have management systems in place to support the work that you do on behalf of your own customers. So we have a competence assessment scheme that everybody goes through initially, and then it's checked every 3 years after the first two, and just make sure that we maintain the service levels that we expect from members. BESA itself is authorised by the government to operate competent person schemes, and we're slightly different to most other competent person schemes because our members focus on commercial work. Really what falls mainly into that is air conditioning, because like the rooms that we're in, there is a requirement under building regulations. And of course they operate the Vent Hygiene Elite scheme for us. So what's behind the scheme? Why do we spend all of this time, energy to put a new scheme together? These are all very familiar photographs to you. It happens everywhere we go. We see it all the time, whether you're directly involved in the cleaning of it or you use other companies or you partner with other companies. This is becoming more and more of a problem, and I'm sure they're all very, very familiar. So what are the scheme drivers behind it itself? Firstly, it's our own members. If you look at BESA membership, we have around about 200 companies who do this for their day job. So they actually go out and do this work and do it on behalf of other people. And we have about 350 other members who use and subcontract to the original 200 here. What we need to do is about risk reduction. And this is where it feeds into other industries besides our own. The risk reduction, of course, the main problem is fire. And it's caused more and more problems. The industry, or the industry that you guys work in, is growing immensely. Habits, I remember when I first went to the States way back in the late 70s, where everybody went out for dinner. We didn't do that here. It's completely changed. So the prevalence of catering establishments is growing and growing and will continue to grow. And there's a risk that's related to that. It's about assurance. If the work's going to be carried out and we're going to make sure that it's safe, can we assure ourselves that that work has been done correctly? And of course, TR19, which Richard kindly mentioned earlier on, TR19 itself is currently going under, it's under review, and it's going to come out for public consultation very, very soon. And it's mainly the grease extract side that has been updated. And there are quite a few changes that are being brought into place, and we will probably go live at the beginning of 2019. And of course, there's the other wider industry interest, people like yourselves, and it's all about compliance and certification. And the wider industry interest is also the insurance groups. So part of the work that we've done, we haven't done this in isolation, because yes, we are engineers by our trade, but we needed to understand from the wider industry, what does this actually mean? So we initially contacted Chris, who's coming on after us this morning, and he said yes, there was definite interest from the insurers from a safety perspective. So we went through FPA and Risk Authority. For those of you who don't know who Risk Authority are, it's basically the FPA arm that talk to the insurers. It's all based on insurance companies who help the industry get to where they need it to be, and they have an increasing risk of fire which is generated by grease extract in ventilation systems. So we've worked with them, and I'm not going to read all that out to you, but it's been very well supported. It's gone down extremely well with the insurance companies, and this quote is actually from Howard Passy, who chairs the Risk Authority, and we're very pleased to get the industry sign up for that. So why us? Why should we do this? Well, if you go way back, then we got the Skills Partnership, and the Skills Partnership is built up from all of the relevant people within the industry. Within BESA itself, there is a specialist ventilation hygiene group, and that is the industry experts, the people who do this on a day-to-day basis. They work all the time, and they're the people who are actually revising TR19 for us and for the benefit of the industry. So right the way through, we develop the Trailblazers, which is similar to what you're doing now, and we also have our own training arm, BESA Training. BESA Training actually then approves centres, so they don't just give them the courses. When they approve a training centre, they are monitored. They have to have quality management systems in place to show they're going to deliver the BESA courses. So the BESA courses, and we will go on to these a little bit later, there are courses that have been developed specifically for this activity. That's never really existed before in the form that it has been taken to now. That has obviously led on to the scheme itself, which we're talking about, and the overall aim is to increase the skill level within the industry. And then last of all, of course, the sign all off is it has to be compliant, and we have to certify it. And that's where the insurers are very interested. What sets your scheme apart from everybody else's? Can they have confidence that the work has been done correctly? And that's the whole key to this. So looking more at the background, it was about developing. So I said it was our own ventilation hygiene group that drove this, and they wanted to raise the standard, and they wanted to be recognised for the work that is done, and especially when it's done incorrectly as opposed to correctly. So it was about establishing the scheme, and its core criteria right through this scheme is TR19. It's the golden thread through the whole thing, and that's absolutely critical for this work to happen. Oh, incidentally, the Guide of Good Practice, which it currently is, that will change to a full specification from BESA. So it's took the next step along. And then it's about learning, and so what we've done is we've created 2 different levels of training course. Because there is no actual qualification in place that is recognised by everybody. And that's an operator level, and it's also a technician level. And again, we had to call it technician, as was said previously, because if you say engineer or supervisor, you get into all sorts of political ramifications that we have to be conscious of. It's about doing it not in isolation, as I said, doing it through partner centres. And we have more and more centres, and I'll come on to that are coming online for people to use. But it's also important through the whole of this engagement that we've continued to engage with all stakeholders. And again, that's part of what I'm doing here today, because you guys deal with this on a regular basis, no doubt, and it's important that we get that message across and let you know that it's coming. And incidentally, this is the first the first audience outside BESA itself that are getting this information. The scheme is running in pilot for about 6 months or so, but it's officially going to be launched at our own event, which is our national conference on the 1st of November. So you're actually ahead of the curve for most of the BESA members. So looking at the qualification requirements themselves, and the reason I want to go into this, I think it's important that you, as an audience, have the assurance that what sits behind this scheme. So if you are involved in this work, you'll see the importance of having an organisation, if it's not your own, but somebody you're going to contract in to do this type of work, has the backing of this scheme behind them. Oops, sorry. So as I say, the golden thread is TR19, and the TR19 also fed into the Trailblazers, and there is now a Trailblazer up and running for installation of ductwork and ventilation systems, and there are places that you can go and get that. They are not the traditional colleges ordinarily, because there just isn't enough, excuse my terminology, but there's not enough bums on seats to have a local college with that many people in that area wanting to do that. So we've encouraged the actual producers and the manufacturers to set up training schools within their premises, and that has actually been done. So you can, but you're going to have to travel if you're going to do it, but the qualification exists for it. So we developed the two different levels here. So you've got the VHE operative, and then you've got somebody who has to be responsible for signing off that work, that it's been done correctly. And that will either be a technician or a supervisor. So all that then feeds into it, and then we're back to the approved centres. And the centres, and they will only, these courses will only be available at BESA approved centres. If somebody else is trying to sell you, ask where their proof is that they are actually a BESA approved centre, because if they're not selling our courses. So as I say, we've got more and more coming online, and as you can imagine, they are the people like our members, most of these people, and they're very, very keen because they want to see their industry progress. So they've made significant investment, and some of the setups in these centres are incredible. You know, they are full live rigs that people can actually get into. We've got these amount of centres coming on, and what I'm pleased to say is that there are now independent trainers who are coming on board. Because you know what industry is like, ladies and gentlemen? Well, why? I don't want to go to a competitor to actually do my training, thank you very much, because they'll end up stealing my engineers. So it's good to see that we're widening out. So they come in and they apply, and then we actually go out and approve them. As I say, they just don't get a tick in the box. They have to demonstrate to us that the business that they operate is actually fit for purpose, and they continue to manage that process. We don't leave them alone, because we go out every year and make sure that they are sticking to what they say they're going to do. And that model is built on the success of the ACS gas scheme through the International Standard 17024. So at this point, the VH scheme itself, now I've done the introduction, I'm going to introduce my colleague, Duncan, who's completely responsible for this scheme. So Duncan, if I could ask you to take over from here.
We're just going to go on to look at the actual makeup of the Vent Hygiene Elite scheme now. So when we looked at the requirements that we had to meet when we were developing this scheme, we realised it had to align with the BESA TR19 guidelines. And as said, that's the Guide to Good Practice of Internal Cleanliness of Ventilation Systems. We realised the importance of that. Obviously, it's one of our guidelines, which has been rewritten to a specification, which will add a little bit more weight to that. But the BESA Vent Hygiene Group, which is one of our specialist member groups, had also echoed the importance that it had to align to TR19. We obviously had to achieve various stakeholder support as well throughout the industry. And we also had to make sure that the scheme that we were looking at to develop was going to be sustainable for every party involved. And to do that, we had to make sure that our price was realistic. It wasn't a barrier to using the scheme, to registering on the scheme, for it to be recognised from clients, from member companies. And we also had to make sure it was fit for purpose. Same reason behind that. But one of the main things was, and you'll all be aware of this as well, every industry has them, the companies that aren't as genuine as others, that undercut, that put real pressure on other genuine companies trying to do things to the right standards. And we had to, it was a main reason for us to make sure that this scheme would help to raise the bar in the industry. As you've seen from the photos before, the before and afters, they sometimes always don't get to those afters following a clean, and remedial action has to be taken. So we had to raise the bar as well. So actually on to the flow for the VHE scheme. The application is made to BESA, and upon receiving of the application, BESA will undertake a review and an audit of that application. A date will be scheduled for an audit, and that will take form of a site-based audit and an office-based audit as well. Following on from those audits, there may be recommendations that we need to offer if the requirements aren't met. We will identify, BESA will identify them with the applicant, and depending on what they are, we will offer improvement areas for that as well. We don't want this to be a barrier for people to join. We want to work with members, as I've said, to help raise the standard. So we'll review those audit outcomes to ensure the business has met the scheme standards, and if everything goes through okay, then the member company will join and become a registered Vent Hygiene Elite company. From that point on, we don't just say, right, okay, you're registered and you can go ahead. There is ongoing surveillance and audits throughout the time as a Vent Hygiene registered company. So the authorised registrant of VHE will carry out works. They will notify that the works will be a certificate of works that will be immediately available upon upload of the works, and there'll be the ongoing surveillance and monitoring of those certificates and post-clean verification reports, which we'll come on to. As Wayne pointed out earlier on, BESA also run and operate a competent person scheme, and it was very important to us that the Vent Hygiene Elite scheme was robust and really could stand up to those kind of standards as well. The competent person scheme runs to conditions of authorisation, and the Vent Hygiene Elite scheme handbook and code of conduct also reflects what we have in place for that competent person scheme. And these are all downloadable, viewable on the Vent Hygiene Elite area of the BESA website. We also have the certificate of registration upon the notification of works, the registration of the member company, so they can prove they are a registered company, and the certificates of compliance to show the notification of works have been done to the right standards. The post-clean verification reports I mentioned before, we'll just refer to them as PCVRs if you don't mind, but they also must comply with TR19. They're quite a big section on TR19, and basically the PCVRs will pinpoint where the work has been carried out, what systems has had work carried out on them, and they will record such information as whether the canopy has been cleaned, the plenum has been cleaned, the filters have been cleaned, upstream, downstream of fans. And it will also ask for observations of the system. Very important part, because a lot of the clients will not want to get above the ceiling, get to certain heights to actually check that the work has been done. So these observations of the system can show if there's any flanges that have become impregnable by grease, if there are any access doors that are seized and that we can't gain access to. So they're important information that's fed back through the PCVRs also. And one of the main things, the photos, the pre and post photos, we've stipulated that they must be date and time and location stamped as well, just to give a bit of peace of mind to the client, so that they are actually aware that clean has taken place at that date and time. So the certificate of works, as you can see, has has the important information on it, as in where the clean is taken, the dates, the date of the next clean that we're recommending as well, and that all comes from cleaning cycles as well, straight out of TR19, depending on the level of work the hours that ventilation system is in operation. And as I said earlier, one of the key things is that these certificates, upon the upload of data, are available immediately. We have the ongoing audits depending on risk evaluations as well, and these are randomly selected from the notifications that are uploaded onto the site, and the random selective nature of it is an important one to bear in mind. So once we've randomly selected that, we request the PCVR from the member company so that we can carry out a desktop audit on that PCVR and check that everything has been carried out in the right, to the right standards. All reports are reviewed to TR19, as I say. Any passes or no actions, and any fails will generate an audit visit to the member company. So the ongoing surveillance and monitoring following the application and compliance, either through the CAS audit, which is the Competent Assessment Scheme for BESA members, or the Vent Hygiene Elite audit for non-BESA members. There are various ongoing surveillance, desktop surveillance carried out throughout the year, and they are 10% of every notification of work, so every PCVR. But there is a minimum of one visit, so we must see at least one visit in those desktop surveillance. So onto the fees. Again, we mentioned that it had to be sustainable, and the sustainability had to be through the cost. So there are some benefits shown from free of charge for application audits and registration fees for BESA members. But again, we consulted with the Vent Hygiene group, and these costs were agreed as as a reasonable request for the cost, and to keep the scheme sustainable that way, and to make the cost not a barrier to registration. So just to summarise, the VHE scheme will consist of the annual office and site audit, ongoing desktop surveillance audits, the minimum of 4 surveillance audits. Where there's any additional risk, we may need more audits. If there are any non-conformities or anything that have been highlighted, we'll work with the member for that. The sustainable design, as I've mentioned a few times, minimise cost to demonstrate the compliance, the reduced risk and assurance to the end user and to insurance standards as well, and obviously peace of mind for a clean that is compliant with TR19. And thanks very much for your attention and listening. I'm going to hand over to Chris now.
Right, I'm going to continue on the theme of schemes and certification and competence now with my little fairly short presentation. Hopefully it'll only take about 10-15 minutes or so, because I'm conscious of time. So just a little bit about who we are and who I am. I'm the schemes manager for BAFE, and we're a not-for-profit independent organisation that writes schemes for the fire protection industry. All of the organisations that are registered with us are third-party certificated, so they have to go, and third-party certificated by UCAS accredited CBs. So what that means is the organisation will apply to the certification body with a scope of whatever the scope is for our particular scheme, and then they get certificated on that based on an initial audit followed by ongoing surveillance audits, very similar to what Wayne was talking about. As I said, we are the scheme owners and the scheme developers, and my responsibility is for writing the schemes and also for the ongoing maintenance of all of those schemes. We currently operate 6 schemes as of yesterday. It was 5 prior to that, but yesterday we launched the kitchen fire suppression scheme, which this is what the main thrust of this particular presentation is about. We're all about supporting competence and quality standards within the fire protection industry. And as has been alluded to now, the insurance companies are increasingly nervous and increasingly aware of the fires that are caused within kitchens and the devastating impact that they can have on both the business and to the property, because generally speaking, if there is a major fire in a kitchen, particularly in built-up areas, it's not only going to affect that particular business, it's also going to affect businesses around. And if you look at the cost of real estate in some of the larger cities, you're talking millions of pounds worth of loss for the insurers. So this is why they are very keen to see this progress. Not-for-profit, as I'd said. Right, the process, very, very quickly. Okay, so an organisation will go to a certification body. The certification bodies are accredited with UCAS to either ISO 17021, which is a management system standard, or 17065, which is conformity assessment or product conformity assessment standard. Once the organisation has been certificated by the certification body, they are then allowed to basically promote their wares. They then get pretty much automatic registration onto our scheme, because the certification bodies operate the schemes on our behalf under license. We have a license agreement with the certification bodies, and because they are best placed and have the manpower and the resource to be able to go out and do the assessments, both surveillance and the initial assessments. And they're looking at the management system, and they're also, most importantly, looking at the competence of the service provider, the organisation. So the scheme, how did it come about? Well, it came about because of industry pressure and also insurer pressure. Now, Wayne mentioned earlier about Risk Authority and the FPA. They were, certainly the FPA, were very involved in the development of the scheme. And indeed, the technical director of the FPA chaired the working group to develop the scheme, along with myself and other industry professionals, including Ian, who's somewhere in the room. I can't quite see him. There he is, he's over there, who's going to be giving his presentation a little bit later from Nobel. The issues that were cropping up were the ones of poor maintenance and no industry control. What was happening is a typical system would be installed, which you're all probably aware of, the kitchen hoods, which have nozzles and pipework and all sorts of fancy stuff in there, which Noble do. And for the sake of inclusivity, I have to mention the other ones of Amorex and Ansell are the other main players in the market. The approved distributors would be installing these systems, but what then? Nothing was happening, and very often organisations would then go to the lowest bidder, basically, to have the ongoing maintenance of these systems. And it wasn't a case of protectionism on the part of the approved distributors. There was very much a need to have a competency scheme in place, because what was clear was that the quality of the work being undertaken by these non-regulated, if you like, non-regulated organisations was falling way short of the mark for what we would expect as a competency scheme provider. It was also there, I have to say, to broaden our offering. We operate very much within the fire protection industry, and this is a completely new sector for us to get involved in. But it was a very important one, given everything that I've said earlier about the demands from not only the industry but also from insurers. So the insurers, the issue that they have or had, and will continue to have, is the increased cost of the claims that they are getting in. They are very, very focused on this, and Ian may touch on this a little bit later, but what will happen, whilst it may be a slow starter on this particular scheme, which we recognise, and we've built this into the development of the scheme, What will happen in 12, 15 months' time when renewals come up on insurance renewals? We think that's when there'll be the big drive for a lot of organisations to say, hang on a minute, we really need to get our system maintained by a competent organisation. And it's taken about 18 months to 2 years to develop the scheme, which is pretty normal for most of our schemes. They do take this sort of period of time, because whilst you might get the document, the actual writing of the document is fairly straightforward. It's all of the other bits which feed into it and get in the delivery mechanism, i.e. the certification body who are delivering the scheme. That's the bit which takes the time, getting them on board, getting a cost model, which is not excessive, and it can't be excessive because we just won't get the buy-in from the service companies or indeed the end users. So, current status, there's no third-party certification, or there wasn't until yesterday. There was no third-party certification of the installation and design of all of these, the systems, the Ansell systems and the Noble systems. Current standards out there are the UL 300 and the LPS 1223. And that's what we've built into the scheme, that all of the service providers and all of the people signed up to the scheme must be working to one of those two standards. And we will review this probably on a 3 or 6 monthly basis after launch. We'll review this whole scheme to see whether there are any other applicable standards which come to the market. And as Wayne has said, historically, there's been a very poor cleaning regime, typically within the ducts and the plenums and the hoods themselves. High property losses, which all feeds into the insurance element of it. Okay, so importantly, the scheme covers for the design, installation, commissioning, recharge, and maintenance of the systems, the fire protection systems. Many of our other schemes are modular based, so it would be a case of having one or more of those particular modules. We've said in this instance, because it is so important that you get the continuity of service throughout the whole process, that each applicant company will have the ability to do all of those modules. Because it's equally as important on the maintenance side that they have a knowledge of the design of these systems, because typically what happens, the technicians, engineers will go into premises in the middle of the night, and if they find that things have been moved, and this is a fairly commonplace, is where chefs in the kitchens, they might be left-handed as opposed to the previous chef was a right-handed chef, so he'll move all the equipment around, and of course the system itself is probably not in the place that they really want it. So minor modifications have to be done on these systems on a fairly regular basis. So the guys going to do the maintenance need to have that design knowledge, so they can, instead of having to sort of contact the client and then contact the office and say, look, we've got the order, we need to do this, they need to be able to make those decisions on site. So it's upping the skills and upping the competence level of those individuals. We do allow for subcontracting within the scheme, but only to other registered companies. So from a business perspective, there may be one organisation that only wants to install or only wants to design these systems. But what we've built into the scheme is that, okay, well fine, you've made a business decision not to do the maintenance, but if you want to remain registered with the scheme, you have to subcontract the maintenance element out to another registered organisation. There's been a built-in recognition of the duct cleaning, the integration with the main fire detection and alarm system, and also the fuel cut-off. So that's all been built into the scheme to help, because there was no doubt that there was a bit of an issue there with, well, who connects up to the gas main? Where does the fuel cut-off come when there is a fire? Every system, once it's been touched, whether it be a maintenance visit or initial installation, will have a certificate of compliance or conformance, which will be issued to the customer at the point, either electronically or whilst on site. The reason for that is so that, and these are not maintenance certificates, and it's whilst there might be a maintenance report, it's worthy of note that we're making these certificates of compliance because the system has to be in its original working performance when the engineers and the maintenance visit has been completed. So, benefits. We've got low cost of membership for the scheme. All the costs will go through the certification body, but and I don't really want to preempt what they may charge, but it's a relatively low cost into the scheme. Our annual fees typically around about £200, £250 to stay registered with us. All of the auditors, the assessors from the certification bodies will have product training on all of the systems, so they will understand what's involved in the design and the installation of these systems. And there's going to be an identification of critical components. So you might have fusible links. There might be the cylinder with the suppression material substance in that. So when an engineer comes off site, the client will go in and say, well, what's been done? Well, we can tell what's been done because we've now got a red fusible link as opposed to a blue one, which was on the previous one. So, and they have to provide evidence that that has actually been done. And I said launch Q3, just outside Q3 into Q4 for this year. So yeah, we launched the new scheme, a soft launch, yesterday at the Fire Safety North exhibition, which is going on today as well. And we had a considerable amount of activity, thankfully, at the show yesterday. So, benefits to the end user. I promise you there's not much more to go now. Benefits to the end user. Okay, so it's giving the end user, either the restaurant or hotel owner, the assurance that the equipment that they are using is maintained and installed by knowledgeable providers. It's evidence, God forbid, if you ever ended up in court after an incident, it's evidence that you can provide the court of due diligence taken. You can say, well, we did everything we possibly could to make sure that the system has been installed, it's been designed and maintained by a competent organisation. And there's the potential there for a lighter touch from insurers. On property insurance, because there's no doubt that when renewals come around in 12, 15 months or so time, that the insurers are going to be looking at this with a very, very keen eye. And if you haven't got the required certification or certificates of compliance, they're going to take a pretty dim view on this. And we know that we've had soundings from high up within the insurance industry, so we know this is going to be happening.